Today I want to take a look at the install and configure expense report sample for Power Apps. Here we have a Microsoft article. It says it'll take 10 to 15 minutes to complete, and you can preview the sample app here. So if we come over and take a look at we see an app called My Expense. We're going to rename that to Expense Report and go ahead and hit Create. And that'll initialize the Power Apps environment. Now for the article, we do need to provision Schema. Got a couple different things going here. Custom list called expenses with a handful of different columns, the first of which is cost center. Over here I have an expenses list, and I'm going to go ahead and add in column. We'll put that down as a choice column and give it a few values. Save that first column, and now we're going to add another column, multi-text. This is going to be called comments. Go. Then we add a status column, 3 choice, new choice, status, put it in, default is open, save. Here we have approver name. We'll go ahead and add that column as a person data type. And we're going to mark the required to yes. Now we're going to add another column, submitted, date submitted, that will be required yes. And now we're going to add another date field. This one's called start date. We'll go under the more options, require info yes. And over here we can add another column, date field. We'll put end date, more, required value yes. Okay, and now we're going to come in here and we're going to create another list. We'll go to Site Contents. We'll click New List. And this one's going to be called Line Items. We're going to add a new column, Choice. Name it Category. Paste in the values. And default food and beverage. Next, we're going to add a cost column, which is a number field. So we'll add that in as number. And require information to true. Now to this, we do date and description. So here we're going to add a column for date, and required is true, and then description is multi-text. Required description, multi-text, required true. And for report ID, we're going to do lookup to expense. Here we're going to add to more, and we'll get a full screen prompt with a lookup. This one's a little bit different. It's going to come from expense. And we want the ID number. With required information, yes. And finally, the title field is not required on line item list. Here's the line item list. Go into list settings. Title required is no. Okay. Next, the tutorial wants us to download a zip file for the package and go prep a few connections at make.powerapps.com. So we've downloaded the zip file. We now need approvals, O365, and SharePoint connection. I come over here to Power Apps. From the home screen on the left, there's an area for connections. We open this up, we get a list. All of these show connected for status. We do have an Office 365 one. We do have SharePoint connections. And what was the third type? An approvals connection. Don't really see that. So we're going to click New, and we're going to search for approval. There is an approvals with the purple icon. We're going to hit Create, and that enables a new connection in our overall connections list for Power Apps. These are dependencies that we'll need during the import process. And from here, we want to go ahead and import our app. So we come over to Apps, we'll do Import Canvas App. We're going to browse for. And with the file uploaded, what we can do is update the name to do Create as New Expense Report. Good. Then we can do create as new, approve expense. Select during import the connection for, next for the approvals connection, we need to select during import one of the existing connections. And user, there we go, select that one. Sweet, so we've mapped all the various dependencies. We can hit the import button down here at the bottom right. It says importing package, don't navigate away. All right, here we can see that our expense report package has been successfully imported with the green arrow and the message up top. And we can review the package content down at the footer. So scrolling through here, we see a couple of different items. Create as new, select during import, all the various connections have been loaded. And if we come over to flow, we see a new item for approve expense as an MS flow that's been created. Go into the edit experience. And here you can see that the flow invokes from Power Apps. It gets items from SharePoint. It starts an approval and notifies the client. Has quite a few steps. Okay, report ID has been submitted. Response, send an email, change the claims. So inside this flow, there's a lot of red text. You see a couple different shaded areas, and they all have references to contoso.microsoft. Well, I don't have access to contoso.microsoft.com. That's not the domain that I'm working on. However, I do have a site over here, and we can use this for our data storage. So if I change the site address here, right, and then the list name, this should be an expense. Start an approval with the approver name. This is one of our data fields on the expense list, so that lets us know we're headed in the right direction, right? That come in and look at the schema for expenses. There is an approver name, so that might be the one that we want to be looping when we apply to each and we see approver name in use. We want expenses for the parent. So there's a little bit of deduction when you're using someone else's flow that you're importing and kind of remapping for your own purposes. So here we want to do the same thing, change out the site collections, go ahead and get this updated, change an item to open status. Okay, fair enough. Over here, remap that one, list name, clear it, pick out the drop down, expenses, save it, flow checker for errors. Errors are coming back on 0. We are saved, and we can exit the flow template. Beautiful. So over in Power Apps Home, we can take a look at all apps, open up Expense Report. And first time opening the app, we get this permission dialog where it's wanting approvals, SharePoint site, and Outlook 365. We're going to allow. And now we have a beautiful expense report application up and running. This is meant to work on mobile phones, tablets, Chromebooks, iPads, whatever you'd like, and very touchscreen friendly with a lot of the UI. So here we can see there's a new item in the corner, a couple of different views. You can toggle open, pending, all, sort by date, filter, different date ranges. Okay, cool. We're going to click the plus in the corner to create a new one, and we'll name this Demo26. And for approver, we can pick out a people picker field. And for cost center, we can go ahead and make a choice here. And one thing we'll notice on the cost center is we click the drop down, but we're not seeing choices available. And the approver login name is not auto-resolving to match either. Almost like these two lookup fields are not actually connected. To examine that further, what we want to do is go into the edit view for the app and look at the data connection. So once inside of edit mode, we can do view data sources. We see a couple of them pop up here. We have approve expense for flow, and then we have 2 SharePoint items for line items and expense. Now if I come into one of these and I do edit data, it pops open a window and it tries to go to canvizconsultingllc.sharepoint.com. That is not the name of my tenant. So I've got a data connection in here that has not been mapped over to the new location. Line items and expense. So what we're going to do is add a new connection. out to SharePoint more generally. And we're going to put in the name of our site that we're working with, expense. We're going to choose expenses and line items. And actually, before we do that, we go to View Connections, Expenses, Line Items. Okay, confirm the original names. Line items, expenses. We're deleting both. All sorts of red arrows are popping up in the background. Power Apps is not real happy that I took away its information. And it's going to want a data connection to function. So we'll put in the URL of our site, check 2 different lists, hit connect. We now have 2 different sources, and the app's looking a little more happy. Go to File, Save, and now we hit Publish. With all of that complete, we can open the Power Apps main screen, go to Apps, and play the report full screen mode. With the form opening, we can now go to Add, put in our data again, and now when we put in a name, we get a name resolution with an email address and an icon. And when we do our drop-down arrow, we get choices. We can pick out a cost center. Beautiful. That creates our new expense report. And you can see the summary details here on the top, comments on the bottom, and then the ability to add new line items. We'll go ahead and do that. We'll add a new line item. And we're going to put in one for a Microsoft exam, which I think the running prices are around $160. We'll do Save and Add New. And we'll put a study guide in here at around $50. Save item. So there we have an expense report for $210. What I really like about this layout is that it works well on a phone, but it's showing a lot of different data. We have the parent record. We have the ability to edit the parent, delete the 2 child items, also see the category and the date for each of those child items, and submit the report overall. If we want to navigate back to the main screen, we go to the top left arrow. And here we can see that we have a single open item at $210. There's the details for it with views to toggle and look at others. Maybe we'll want to add one more expense report. And we could dial this back for early part of January. And here we could put on-site meeting, pick out an approver, again, somebody in our tenant, and a cost center, create, add a new line item, pick out our date, put in the item. We'll do a flight, and maybe we can do hotel. And here we can see our expense report for the on-site meeting. Navigate back. And we can see that we have 2 different open items. We'll go ahead and take our first one here and we'll submit it to route forward. And now we see it has a pending status. And we come over to check flow. We see we now have 1 execution that shows running. We can open it up to take a closer look. And we can see that this is executing for the items in the expense list. So it enumerated what's in the expense, and it's looking at different ones to start an approval. So after routing the expense report forward for approval, we can look at the run history for our flow. And we can see that it picked up on an item and it's pending, which is the orange icon in the corner. And over in flows, under action item approvals, we'll see that expense report is pending your approval. here for Demo 2.6 with approve, reject, or reassign. Additionally, we do have this Outlook email which gets sent. It has the name, Demo 2.6, of the expense report, and an approve, reject button with a link to go view the item. And we can approve or reject directly from Outlook. In this case, we're going to do it from the browser. So we'll go ahead and approve right here. And you can add a comment. Go ahead and confirm. And that completes the one approval task that we had pending in the system. And this is helpful to have a MS Flow approval overview where you can kind of see your history. If you have multiples that are pending, this is a link you can share with other people. And it just kind of helps you manage the queue in case you have a high volume. On the run history, you can see it steps forward. It goes through notify client and the change action status failed. And this is interesting. We have a little error message in here. Change item status to approved. The past in field cost center could not be found. Okay, that's a schema issue. And over here in our list settings, we do have cost center. We have it as it creates it without the space. Interesting. That's one of the new features in SharePoint Online, but yet the MS Flow is an older definition. It's expecting to have a space. Here we can scroll through and we can find the item there where it has cost center. And we can actually do a dynamic expression, search for cost center, and we can include it without the space in the middle. That way the next one we run will be able to route successfully, and we'll do the yes and no branches so we're updated on both sides. Come over here, add another dynamic expression, save. There we go. Yeah. Excellent. With the flow updated, we'll be able to route future ones and have them update the status when they finish the routing process. And back over here, we can see our Power Apps to manage any open, pending, approved items, and go ahead and submit new ones. So that's an introduction to the expense report template, the flow process for approval routing, and the email notifications that actually go with that as far as approve and reject. So that's a pretty good high-level intro to Power Apps, Flow, the approval sequence, SharePoint list for storage,